I too had made an outlook and decision for myself that my value comes from my status, my title, the income, financial stability, the giving of myself to others. And unfortunately, after time, it came at the expense of myself.
I truly believe that for each of us, our purpose is wrapped up in our excitement. And so many of us as kids got mixed messages on that. We got messages that said, oh, don't have too much fun, or that's too good to be true. There's lots of cultural messages that we have. And I really work with people to pull those apart and say, no, your excitement is your spirit calling you forward and saying, this is for you. Your interest and curiosity in a topic is literally your soul saying, go over here.
Welcome to Legacy Lounge, the podcast where you'll discover how to lead with purpose and build a legacy that matters. So if you're ready to step into your full potential, show up authentically for yourself and others, and create a lasting impact on the world, you're in the right place. Let's begin. Hello, and thank you for listening in to this episode of Legacy Lounge, where I have the honor and pleasure to spend the next amount of time with Sue Erhart, who is one incredible woman that I am so excited to share with this audience. So, Sue, I will pass it to you to introduce yourself.
Thanks, Brenna. I'm delighted to be here and right back at you. So, Brenna, I'm a retired corporate executive who has launched an entirely second career that is my true passion, and it's all focused on writing. I have a website called Practical Spirituality where I help people on their personal spiritual journeys. And just this year, I released my first book. So I have lots of writing projects in the hopper, and I just couldn't be happier with this second career.
Well, that, first of all, is incredible on not only balancing a corporate career, but also fully investing a piece of yourself to build the passion that has become a business, a lucrative business, and at the same time, publish a book. That's amazing. And I know we will get some glimpses into that style and format throughout today's conversation. But just to kick off the episode, you have got to look her up. I have been a part of the newsletters that come out, and man, has it challenged my thought perception and really allowed me the space to question, like, wow, okay, that's right. How do I feel about this? Where did I learn this? And know that I'm able to make an own opinion for myself of what I do with that. Love it. Well, in the spirit of Legacy Lounge and what we are all about, from utilizing your platform as a leader in many facets, I want to start out with a question on someone else's legacy that has profoundly shaped your own life's journey. Who comes to mind? Why did they come to mind? And what part of, their legacy did you hold on to? I would love to start us off with.
Yeah, so the person who comes to mind right away in terms of my leadership legacy is my older brother, Tom. He's also now retired, but he's just one of these individuals who really knows himself, loves himself, has great confidence in himself, and just really presents in all areas of life in ways that always inspire me. And I'll just tell one quick story because I certainly have a history of early in my career really showing up, doing more what was expected of me than necessarily what I wanted to do. And I remember at one point in time, Tom and I went to a relative's funeral. It was out of town. And we went there, and there were some groupings of people at the funeral who wanted us to go to dinner with them. And me, in my natural state of wanting to please everyone and keep everyone happy, was right away saying, like, oh, okay, I guess we'll go to dinner with these people. And Tom just kind of abruptly said, like, no, you and I want to have dinner by ourselves. We're going off on our own. And it was just like one of these moments, and Brenna, when you're around people like that, what's so fun and so inspiring is that they do things and say things that you weren't even thinking about. Like literally, I was like, I didn't know that that was an option. So that's just one small story. He does that for me all the time. But I love leaders like that who inspire you. They don't even realize they're inspiring you. They're just being themselves.
Yes. And holy smokes, is that an excellent example? Because the power of legacy is just that. It is the small, tiny moments where people act in a certain way. They say a certain response. They think a certain way. And they don't even realize how people around them are watching them, listening to them, observing them, and they are empowered by those moments that take place. So much so that I am assuming that moment of influence again comes up in your career or in your life where you're presented with, here is the plan of what is next. And it probably supported you in saying, no, and this is a healthy boundary for me because I want to go do this. And that's okay.
For sure. I mean, I think so many of us who were successful, particularly working for another, one of the things that we were really successful at was pleasing a boss, pleasing our employer, doing what our employer expected. I mean, that's the reason you get ahead in companies and jobs. And let me tell you, I mean, I got ahead. I did great with all of that. But doing so comes at a cost. And the cost is really that connection with the self. And again, that's why I really admire my brother, Tom. I really felt like he never kind of gave up himself or who he was, even as he led. And so that's now what I aspire to do as well.
I love it. Man, shout out to your brother. That is amazing. In terms of the impact of what you do sacrifice, whether you unconsciously do it or consciously do it, and the impact that it has to who you are at your core as an authentic person who just happens to also be in a leadership position of influence. I know you mentioned stepping into the career that excited you, that is your joy and your fulfillment, regardless of what the financial aspect implications could have been. What gave you the courage to make that kind of a leap?
I think when you find the thing that you would do for free, that lights you up that much, that the value is, you just say, I have to do this. I want to do this. I think it becomes easy. I think the hard thing for a lot of people is that when you kind of wedge yourself into a career or a job that is, let's just say, satisfactory, but doesn't light you up or you wouldn't do for free. When you do that for a long time, your wants and desires and your own personal interests go a little dormant. And this is some of the stuff that I teach and that I write about. They go dormant, but you can coax them back to life. And then once you do, and you find the power of those desires and the power of doing fulfilling work, well, there's just no turning back, Brenna. You can't put that genie back in the bottle.
Yes. It fuels, it sets the soul on fire, and you have to chase it. You can't close it once you find it. I love that. And I know from following along in some of the newsletters from you, I know there is a lot of discussion around powerful cycles of self-affirmation or how to really center yourself in order to navigate your day. And I believe from what I have been able to learn of you as an individual and through your work, you have such an interesting perspective on practical spirituality and how that integrates in your life, which in turn is intertwined with your leadership role. Can you just share some insight and perspective on that?
Yeah, I'll tell you, I was someone who for a long time held a limiting belief that the suppression of my own wants and desires and doing what was expected of me made me holy and good. Okay. I thought those things were connected. I thought when I put others first ahead of me, I was doing God's work, frankly. And I will tell you that through a lot of soul searching and introspection, I believe those beliefs were not only limiting, but false. And so I've really changed my entire rubric to really say, first thing that I have to do is to really know and love myself. I can't give love to others until I do that. So I now see as a core spiritual principle that I put myself first, take care of myself first, and pay attention to how I talk to myself. I see the way I talk to myself as something deeply spiritual. And I'm so committed to, I would say, spreading the word on that I have a free weekly newsletter that you can sign up for. Every Sunday morning, you'll get an essay from me, and it encourages you to go on a journey to discover what you believe, not what you were taught, not what someone told you, but what you at the core of your being believe. And I will certainly, I'm not shy about letting you know what I believe, but I really encourage people to take ownership of their life and take ownership of their own spiritual journeys.
Wow. And powerful. Wow, wow, wow. If you are listening, make a note to go follow the essay, because what you just shared is giving people the opportunity to reflect on where learned lessons, behaviors, ideals, thoughts come from, in the space to ask, well, how do I feel? What do I think? What do I want? And know that it is okay to change your mind, to change your viewpoint and your perspective, change the path and the way that you go about things. And that is what leading authentically is all about. And we need more of it in the world. I love it. And I could have used you in my life. I am fully embracing the impact of what I can get now. But I, too, had made an outlook and decision for myself that my value comes from my status, my title, the income, financial stability, the giving of myself to others. And unfortunately, after time, it came at the expense of myself. And it was really hard to build back your self-worth and your self-value and question, what do I do now? And luckily, our paths crossed when they did, because you have reignited that fire in my own soul. And the work that you do and what you teach is allowing me to continue to grow at a rate that I did not even know was possible. You mentioned specific daily practices. So how do these rituals contribute to the effectiveness of your leadership, or what experience does that framework put you in to navigate through your day?
So I would say once I really began a practice of centering on myself and my own wants and needs as being not only valid, but as my best guides for my life and where to go next, I simply found myself less anxious and less worried. I found, too, that I just developed a really natural confidence. And that confidence, I think, just exudes when you're a leader. Like you give others permission to do the same for themselves when you show up as someone who is grounded and centered. I really see it, Brenda. I mean, I tend to be a visual person, but I see it that when early in my career, when I was seeking to make others or my employer happy, it's as if I was giving my energy away to something outside of me. And then once you kind of put the focus back on yourself and this inner success is what I call it, you bring all that energy back onto you. And that's powerful. That's really powerful. I believe it's how we are meant to live, is from this place of inner success, inner power. And then from there, we can build outward.
I could not agree more. And that is the perfect segue into leading with more and knowing your historical professional career and the sheer amount of power, if you will, that comes with that status. How do you, as a leader, balance delivering results and meeting the expectations of the job while maintaining spiritual practices in a way that support you?
I think the results emanate from the core practices. I mean, I really think that when you show up authentically and stand in your power and your confidence and see everyone else you are working with the same, meaning they are equally capable of standing in their power. They might be at a different place on their personal journey or personal transformation than you are, but they are perfectly capable. And seeing everyone that way, you lead in different ways. You don't micromanage. You don't question where they are or what they're doing. Those are the management techniques of what I would say is someone who's not inner aligned. And once you are inner aligned, you very much give people the freedom to do their job and do it well. And the results emanate from that.
Yes, yes. The space is critical. And people surprise you. They show you their power and what all they can do when you give them the space and the freedom to do it with trust, and to trust that also it's done with integrity. So I know you've led various teams of different sizes and different impacts to the business in many facets, and on this new journey of creating your own business and growing, you have always stayed true in encouraging and developing those that fall under your hierarchy of support. How do you help others, whether they maybe are a direct report for you or it's somebody that you mentor? How have you helped others figure out their own authentic practices or how to maintain a professional standard and do the work while also going on this journey for themselves as a leader? Like, that in corporate is just, any corporation, any business, any size, like, that's power. And that is somebody that is using their platform as a leader for good. And so I would love to hear any insight around how you have chosen to incorporate that into your leadership.
So I've mentored a lot of people and led a lot of people while I was still working. And what I consistently did with people who were open to it is really encouraged them to get granular about their days and what they enjoyed, and with a real focus on the activities that they did that made them feel powerful or good or uplifted. And I encourage people to log these things and to write them down and to say, this is what I liked and why. I then encourage them and work with them to really look at those activities. You could log for a few weeks and you'd have massive insights about yourself, but then to really look at those and develop themes, because there's so much about the working world where the thing that we're interested in could be transferred to something else. So take, for instance, someone who said, wow, I got a lot of satisfaction out of taking a huge amount of information and distilling it down to an executive summary and briefing on it. So some people get a thrill out of that and enjoy that. You might encourage and teach that person to say, okay, I can now see 100 ways you can apply that skill and different things that you could be doing with that. But the key is, as the leader, is that you're encouraging them to lean into the things they're good at and the things that they enjoy. And really pushing to say, if there's a project that just sings to you, speak up, take that project, do that project. And that's how I led all of my teams. And the work always got done. It always got done. But what we did consistently is that people felt empowered to speak up for what was really soul satisfying for them.
That is a testament of the culture that you build for teams that you are a part of, and giving the space and the support to think outside of the box and really, one, help people identify their strengths and then support them, and amplifying that in the workplace is so rare and so important. But it also allows that individual to then see how their skills in the workplace are transferable into their life. And that's why this concept of how powerful legacies can be is so meaningful to me. Because as a leader, you have this platform where you're watched and listened to, just like you were with your brother in that small moment that stayed with you for your life. but it taught you in a second, you have the choice to say yes to the commitment or to say no, thank you, and that it's okay. And I think in a professional environment, it has become very rigid in that I have to live in this grind and I have to be available all the time and I have to have the answers. And it's not. The silence in the space is power. And I love that you are very intentional with how you help people that you come across in any facet of your life identify their own power and how to put that to the test and see what you're actually capable of doing, because that can change your life.
I truly believe that for each of us, our purpose is wrapped up in our excitement. And so many of us as kids got mixed messages on that. We got messages that said, oh, don't have too much fun, or that's too good to be true. There's lots of cultural messages that we have. And I really work with people to pull those apart and say, no, your excitement is your spirit calling you forward and saying, this is for you. Your interest and curiosity in a topic is literally your soul saying, go over here. We really need to learn to follow those things and honor those things versus suppress and hold back on them.
Yes. And without going down a rabbit hole on the amount of screens that we have in front of our face all day, every day, and the accessibility through technology, which is amazing, especially with AI integrations, there's good and bad, and you've got to know what works for you. But as a leader and a role model for many, professional and personal, I would assume that most people in life have someone that they look up to. And the question around somebody with a legacy that has impacted you and that role model for you in that moment being your brother, super powerful. When you think about the Sue living her day-to-day life, and maybe there's a role model-esque that you look up to, you don't have to say who it is, but what attributes, what characteristics, what qualities does the type of person that you want to emulate? What are some of those that come to mind?
So it's interesting you say that, Brenna, because I would say at this point in my life, my biggest role model is my spirit. And I see my spirit as a she. And to me, it's my true self. It's my best self. It's the version of me that I aspire to be. But she's confident, clear, and compassionate. She knows what she wants and goes after what she wants. She has a way of flowing through the day that is intuitive and works with her energy, never against it. She deeply loves all people. And when people rub her the wrong way, she looks within to see what's being triggered in her. So that's my role model these days. And that's how I aspire to live my life. And that's what I try to teach other people to do, frankly, because it's really fun to live this way. Okay, this isn't holy or repression or anything like that. I think it's living as a whole integrated self. And it's really can be quite magical.
Man, that just moved my own soul. I love it. And not only is it self-empowering, but it is accountable and it is inspiring and it is true to you and it evolves as you evolve. And I just love it and all that you stand for and do. When you think about the future of your own legacy, and this question really gets people to be like, ew, I don't know how I feel about that. But what do you want your own legacy to be? And it could be, as a leader, this is the legacy that I hope to leave. Also, as a person, this is the legacy that if I got to write my own, this is what I would hope it would represent.
So, at my core, I'm a writer. That's really what I'm passionate about and what I really enjoy doing. So I really want my legacy to be that the things that I write, and I do find that writing can be a very personal thing. You know, I write and then you sit alone and read what I write and integrate it. But I want my legacy to be that people take my writing, learn from my writing, but then embark on their own journey to recapture their own authentic self and do the work. I'm here to help, but I can't do the work for you. So I see myself as, sometimes I like to say that I feel like I'm maybe 5 minutes ahead on the journey, and I'm sending back missives, like these writings, these essays, to the prior version of me who could have benefited from them. So in a lot of ways, I write for me, and I hope that they help other people too, pick them up and say, I can move forward with this as well.
I love that. And I totally feel it in the essays that you do send out and share. And I think that writing is not, I've never considered myself a writer until of late after meeting you. And it could be a simple prompt that you sit with. It could be reading a chapter from your new book and being like, wow, I've never actually slowed down enough to even consider thinking in this and sitting in this. I just think it's beautiful. And I appreciate the attribution to paying it forward through life's lessons. That's what we all want. We want to succeed and achieve and do all these things, but also turn around and put a hand to pull the people up that are still wanting to do that and achieve that behind you. Very, very powerful.
I think all of us have a book in us. I really do. And I think all of us can be writers. And one of the reasons I encourage writing so much is that so much of our thinking tends to be amorphous and just sort of background noise in our life. It's fears, it's limiting beliefs, it's stories we're telling ourselves. And there's something about the process of taking those amorphous thoughts and pulling them down into words. And you could do it spoken as well, but it's about taking those thoughts and putting them into words that lets you see the thinking that's holding you back. Because in my experience, most of us go through the first half of life picking up a lot of limiting beliefs, self-negating behaviors, and mistaken ideas. And then we spend the second half of life unwinding all of those. And writing, I find, is just really helpful. So I encourage, everyone can do it.
You know, something just came to mind as you said that, and I completely agree on learning. And then you recognize, it's like the two mountains in life, right? And on the second mountain, you're unwinding the things that you're like, oh, I do have control to change this if I want to. Do I? And why? There is her name is Carolyn Mace. And I believe her previous career, she used to help, identify and read energies. And people would come to her and say, like, tell me what's wrong with me or tell me how to help me. And she would. And then she realized that that's not teaching anyone to do it for themselves. And so she changed her thought model and she started providing prompts. And she runs on like a 15-minute cycle and she'll say, here's your prompt for today. Hit record on a time clock and just write whatever comes to mind. And I was faced with this opportunity recently. And the person leading the discussion, she's like, if you can't think of anything to write or you don't have something you want to write about, write your grocery list. Like nobody cares. It's 15 minutes. And the prompt was, in this one, you are ... And you could take that many different ways, right? And I think there was so much power in that one activity for myself in 15 minutes, but it stemmed from following along in your essays, because that's what got the seeds planted in allowing me to understand, to think bigger, to think of what I can be, to think about the potential. And separate of that, reading the Lose Your Critic, which we will get into next, fabulous recommendation. And I think it really puts things into perspective to when you hear a question or you're given a prompt like that. In this one, you are. What do you want to do with that? Right? It's endless. And I love it. And I had to share that because the the writer in me, I never would have described myself as a writer ever, but I do get an experience to understand myself in a different way because of putting a pen to paper and writing out what's really going on everywhere.
The big aha for me is I think for a lot of years, I thought spirituality was about your external behavior and maybe all your thoughts were free, let's just say. And I'm now firmly of the belief that spirituality is pretty much all about your thinking. And not only in the sense that I believe that thoughts are prayers, but it's also that so much of spirituality is about surrendering and letting go of the limiting beliefs you're carrying so that you can be the authentic soul who you are, which is very powerful.
Absolutely powerful. As we wrap up or come to the close of our interview, and without giving away a lot of the info here, what would you like to say about Lose Your Critic, or anyone that is interested? What would you like to share about your book?
Well, the first thing I'll say is I think all of us have a critic in some form or another. For some of us, it's an obvious critic, meaning it is either self-critical or critical of others. But the critic shows up in other ways. It shows up by being making you be fearful to take action. The critic shows up by making you play small. The critic shows up by making you settle and say things like, oh, what I have is enough. The critic shows up by putting too much emphasis on others and their happiness in terms versus your own happiness. So I think all of us have a little bit of a critic somewhere. And the thing I want people to know is that the critic, and however it shows up for you, is merely a habit. It's a habit of thinking. It's not real. It's simply a habit of thinking, and you can change the habit. So my book is a 28-day process where I give you an essay and an exercise every single day that helps you repattern your mind and give yourself a new habit. And it's a habit that supports you. And it's something that I have found, like when I deal with people who are really into thinking about manifesting their desires and working through, and they are confused as to why they're not manifesting. My guess is for most of them, they have a critic that they have not dealt with. So they're doing all of the positive things, trying to manifest, but they're not addressing this core habitual thought pattern that they have around the critic. So my book is designed to help you lose the critic so you can go lead the life you want.
Incredible. And throughout my own reading, there are critics that I didn't even know existed. And I think what has been really supportive and helpful is not feeling bad about it. And I think you've done a beautiful job in articulating that this is normal. It's normal to have critics. It's normal to have negative self-talk in some fashion, and you might not even realize that it's negative because you're not using negative words in the moment. But the patterns is incredibly impactful to change your life. And for leadership that feels pressured to conform to traditional standards of what leaders look like, what leaders model. I've got tons of books up here, and Atomic Habits is one of the first I've read, and I loved it. And the techniques around healthy habits to be productive, healthy habits to, get yourself consistency. Those are in actions. And I think specifically around Lose Your Critic in your book and in your vision of spirituality growth, this challenges the critic of your thought, which I personally have never heard of any type of support outside of, my therapist, which I love when you need. It's there as a resource, but this is something you can do on your own. And I just want to amplify that if people do not grasp this opportunity, it's a missed one, because there is powerful transformations waiting for you in your own constructive thought process.
Yes. I mean, and therapists are wonderful. They're just not in your head 24/7. And you are. And so you really have to be the one who does the work. And that's really the fundamental premise of my book, is not only is it your responsibility, but it's you're the only one who can do this. But once you do, and once you dip a toe in that water to really say, I'm going to challenge my limiting beliefs, I'm going to be kinder to myself, I'm going to pay attention to my wants, my desires, and follow my excitement. Once you do just a little bit of that, my personal experience has been my spirit, call it whatever it is, divine God, swoops in and helps me massively. So I do believe that we are aided and supported in this work. It's positive work and it's necessary work.
I could not agree more. Well, to round us out, I will ask, are there any final thoughts, any resources you'd like to share with the audience, anything that you want to share with the listeners, along with how do our people find you?
So the easiest way to find all of my offerings is at my website, which is SueErhart.com. There, you'll be able to find the free newsletter, links to the podcast that I have, courses that I offer, including a free one to get you started, as well as links to buy my book. It's all there for you.
Absolutely love it. Well, I will ensure we have that in the show notes for our audience. And I want to thank you, Sue, for your time and the work that you have done on yourself and turned it into a powerful resource to share with all of us today. And I know your time is super valuable, and I appreciate you choosing to share a little bit of it with me and with my audience. So thank you for tuning in to another powerful episode of Legacy Lounge, where we have explored the authentic leadership and the practical spirituality and the power that comes with staying true to yourself. Until next time, I am Brenna, reminding you that your legacy is being written every day. Make it count. That's it for this episode of Legacy Lounge, a podcast dedicated to empowering you to lead with purpose. Remember, leadership begins with you. When you're connected to your values, strengths, and authentic self, you show up powerfully for your team, businesses, and everyone you lead. To authentically lead others, you must first lead yourself. I challenge you to consider, how are you investing in your personal growth to create a legacy that you envision? Thank you for joining me in the Legacy Lounge. If this episode sparked any thoughts or inspired action, I'd love to hear from you. I'm your host, Brenna Rollins-Williams. Connect with me on LinkedIn or other socials, and let's continue the conversation. Remember, your legacy is built one intentional step at a time.